The countdown to Wednesday, July 9th, 2025. The operating room was a crucible of chaos the moment Grace Buckingham, Bridget Forrester, and Lee Finnegan burst through its doors. Two gurneys bearing wounded souls and one message seared across every white-coated face. Only 2 lives could be saved. Luna Nozawa's shallow breathing was ragged but present, her throat injury bleeding fast into her lungs. Sheila Carter Sharp lay pale, a bullet through her leg threatening to sever vital arteries. And Liam Spencer, the man who had stepped between shooter and victim, was found collapsed on the sidewalk, a bullet lodged deep in his chest that had already siphoned away more of his life than any surgeon could give back. The lights above flickered in the sterile gloom as monitors flicked to life. There was not a second to waste. Grace's steady hands swept over Luna, her eyes blazing with a desperate hope that the young woman could still be rescued from her self-inflicted nightmare. Bridget, her brow damp, moved to stabilize Sheila's shattered femur, compressing wounds and calling for clamps. As Lee barked orders like a general marshalling her troops. "Clamp here. Get me a vascular clamp. Prepare blood on standby." All the while calculating which 2 bodies held a pulse strong enough to warrant the fight. The decision, cruel and final, was none of hesitation but of impossible logistics. Luna's wound was perilous but accessible. Sheila's was grievous, but straightforward to patch. Liam's chest trauma was catastrophic, the bullet perilously close to his heart. Lee's voice, calm yet unyielding, interrupted Grace's plea. "We've got to keep Luna alive. We need to stabilize Sheila now," and in that moment, the fate of the Spencer patriarch was sealed. There was no time to mourn, only the silent resignation that filled the sterile air as Liam's EKG flatlined, his name echoing hollowly against the walls as the surgical team shifted focus away from the man who had tried to save so many. A pause, a collective breath held too long, then reality crashed back. Liam Spencer had died on the table despite every effort, every prayer, and every beat his heart had left to give. Outside the OR, the world shifted on its axis. News of Liam's death exploded through the halls of both Spencer Publications and Forrester Creations, ripping at the seams of every alliance. Bill Spencer, the gunmetal titan whose empire was built on power and vengeance, learned of Lee's decision within minutes and saw not a tragic necessity, but a betrayal of the Spencer name. His fury was volcanic. A vow thundered through the top floors of his skyscraper that Lee Finnegan, the once admired chief of surgery, would be disgraced, her credentials revoked, her reputation as shredded as the bullet-torn defenses of the man she left to die. "I will make sure every hospital, every medical board in this country and beyond knows the name Lee Finnegan as the doctor who chose Luna and Sheila over my son," he hissed into the phone, and that single promise ignited a war that would burn hotter than any courtroom or boardroom drama the Forrester empire had ever endured. Meanwhile, Steffi Forrester Finnegan, who had watched helplessly as Grace and Bridget fought to save the lives torn apart by Luna's vendetta, was left with a wound no surgery could heal: the loss of Kelly's father. The image of her daughter's tiny face pressed against the glass wall of the operating suite, eyes wide with innocent hope, would haunt her mother's nights. Steffi's devotion to Kelly was unshakable, but beneath her composed exterior lay a tumult of guilt and sorrow. Why had Liam given his life for Luna, that same Luna whose obsession with hope had already brought so much pain? Steffi paced the halls, clutching her phone as she reread messages from Finn, from Bridget, from Hope, each one another hammer blow that reminded her Kelly would grow up without the grandfather who had doted on her curls, who had whispered stories into her ear, who had shown her the strength that only a Spencer could possess. And through it all, Lee Finnegan bore the weight of her choice like a scar given flesh. She had saved the 2 wounded women, yes, but at the cost of her patient's life and the wrath of a media mogul who would stop at nothing to see her brought low. As the blood dried on surgical sheets and the wails of grief echoed down hospital corridors, Alliances shattered and new ones formed in the crucible of loss. Bill Spencer unleashed PR blasts accusing Lee of malpractice, demanding investigations, threatening defamation suits that would bleed the hospital dry. Forrester Creations, torn between the loyalty it owed to the Buckingham Forrester Finnegan triumvirate and the public relations nightmare Bill Spencer was stirring, found itself in the crosshairs of a conflict it never anticipated. Steffi, torn between her motherly grief and her fierce loyalty to Finn and Lee, faced an impossible crossroads, side with the man who had lost his brother, or with the woman who had saved her husband's sister and her best friend. Every conversation was laced with tension. Calls between Steffi and Hope crackled with unshed tears as they revisited every moment leading to the shooting, every lead-up that might have saved Liam. Texts from Finn to Lee were curt, professional. But underneath lay an ocean of anger and confusion. How could the woman he called mother choose to let his brother die? How could the chief of surgery value a self-inflicted gunshot and a hardened criminal's wound over the heart of a Spencer? And yet, in the sterile crucible of that operating room, Lee had made the choice no doctor wants to face: save the patient most likely to survive, even if that meant letting another slip away. Ethical boards would debate her decision for months, but for those left behind, there was no debate, only the sharp ache of absence. In the wake of Liam's death, the city of Los Angeles itself felt the tremors. Paparazzi camped outside the hospital, broadcasting live feeds of Hope Logan's tear-stained face as she clung to Beth and Carter's steady embrace. Soap columns churned out hours-by-hour recaps, each more sensational than the last, feeding on the Spencer-Finnegan feud as though it were scripted to attract maximum ratings. Lawyers circled Lee Finnegan like sharks, demanding depositions, threatening lawsuits, while Bill Spencer maneuvered board members to oust her from her post, promising to deliver proofs of negligence that would permanently blacken her name. Steffi wrestled with her sorrow and rage, promising Kelly that her grandfather would always live in their hearts, even as she struggled to explain death to a 5-year-old who only understood that Granddad Liam would never again chase her around the garden. Meanwhile, with Liam gone, Hope felt the ground shift beneath her feet. Carter's promise to be the best stepfather in the world became both a balm and a blade. She found comfort in his unwavering support, yet every shared smile, every gentle touch reminded her of the man she had lost and of the life that had been stolen in the name of protecting someone else. The war lines, once invisible beneath the sheen of high society and couture, were now drawn in red ink and every headline. Spencer Publications prepared an exposé that would question every choice made in that, or Forrester Creations drafted a statement of support for Lee, praising her heroism and medical judgment, and in every thread of social media, viewers debated whether Lee's decision was justified or monstrous. Was she a saint for saving the lives of the wounded, or a sinner for abandoning a Spencer to die? Bill Spencer, his grief sharpened into a dagger, was determined to prove the latter. He believed that the loss of his son demanded justice, that Lee's hands bore the blood of Liam Spencer, and that no apology or medical board clearance could cleanse her name. Steffi, torn between the instincts of a daughter-in-law and the heart of a mother, clung to Finn as he navigated the fallout with his characteristic calm, even as his own faith in his mother wavered. The feud burgeoned into every corner of their intertwined families, threatening to rend asunder the fragile alliances that had been carefully built over generations. Yet amid the rage and recrimination, a darker question loomed. Could anyone truly win a war born of such loss? Bill Spencer, in his quest for vengeance, risked dragging the Spencer legacy through the mud. Steffi, in her grief, risked alienating the woman who had saved her daughter's aunt and could have been her friend in another life. Carter, steadfast by Hope's side, risked stepping into a void left by Liam and finding it impossible to fill. Brendan Buckingham and the Forrester patriarchs watched helplessly as a single shooting spiraled into a conflict that eclipsed any runway battle or boardroom coup. And Lee Finnegan, once a revered surgeon whose only goal had been to heal, now found herself at the center of a maelstrom that threatened to destroy her career, her relationships, and perhaps her very belief in the oath she had taken. The war had begun the instant the bullet entered Liam's chest, but its battles would be waged for months to come, in courtrooms, in boardrooms, and in the fragile chambers of human hearts. And as the city waited with bated breath for the next flash of breaking news, one thing was certain: nothing would ever be the same again in the world of the bold and the beautiful. Could not be more electrifying as viewers brace for one of the most harrowing hours in the history of the bold and the beautiful. In the wake of Luna Nozawa's shocking attack, 3 lives hang in the balance, and among them is Liam Spencer. Our brave hero who stepped between Luna and his loved ones only to be struck down in the line of duty. As the cameras cut to black on the cliffhanger, we know that Grace Buckingham, Bridget Forrester, and Lee Finnegan will race through the hospital corridors with 3 shooting victims in tow, each wounded, each fighting for breath, and each carrying a story of sacrifice and survival. One of those stories, heartbreakingly, will end in tragedy. But whose? The writers have guarded that secret zealously, promising us tears, rage, and a reckoning that will reverberate through Los Angeles and beyond. This isn't just soap opera shock value, it's the crucible in which relationships will either be reforged or forever shattered. Hope Logan's anguish is the emotional epicenter of what is to come. She wakes each morning with the grim knowledge that the man she has fought for, forgiven, and loved beyond measure may not have tomorrow. Every memory of Liam's laughter with their daughter, Beth, every echo of his voice telling her she is his compass, every image of him cradling her when she felt lost, all of it pulses through Hope's veins like wildfire. Yet she has no hard proof of Liam's survival or demise, only the word of paramedics and the distant, sterile hum of hospital machinery. She has not yet been told that Liam was shot in the chest while shielding Luna, that blood soaked his shirt, that he collapsed before a single surgeon could utter his name. Hope only senses that something is very wrong. Sleep eludes her because her heart is not at rest. She wakes in the night, her breathing shallow, and cradles Beth as if the child could somehow ward off the darkness closing in over her father. Into that void steps Carter Walton, offering a shoulder, a confidant's ear, and above all, a promise. He will do right by Hope and by Beth. More than that, he vows to protect the little girl who calls him Uncle Carter, to stand in as a stepfather if Liam does not return, and to do so without ever betraying the hope that Liam will defy the odds. Carter's pledge is noble, earnest. He believes in love beyond loss, in family forged rather than merely inherited. But he also knows that to keep Hope's fragile spirit from fracturing, he must tread carefully, never overstepping as he counsels her through sleepless nights. That promise he makes to Hope in the half-light of her living room crystallizes his place in this unfolding drama, protector, pillar, and potential rival for Liam's place in Hope's life should Liam's fate be sealed. Carter's declaration echoes like a vow not only to Hope but to himself. That he will rise to this unprecedented moment with every ounce of decency he possesses, even as he wrestles with jealousy, protective urges, and the gnawing unknown of whether Liam will survive to reclaim his role as Beth's father and Hope's husband. Meanwhile, the race to save 3 lives plays out with surgical precision, an ironic turn for the bold and the beautiful, usually a stage for glamour more than grit. Bridget Forrester, head of surgery, is balanced on a knife edge of professionalism and emotion. She knows each procedure could be the difference between life and death, and she also knows her colleague and dear friend Grace will be by her side. Her fingers flying over scalpels, her eyes blazing with determination. Lee Finnegan stands at the ready to coordinate and triage, her medical acumen matched only by her steely resolve. She is the calm in this storm of blood and adrenaline. Sheila Carter Sharp, shot through the leg, has enough luck to survive the initial assault, but her pain is searing, and she teeters between remorse and defiance. Every breath she draws a testament to the chaos she sowed. Luna Nozawa lies unmoving, her throat grazed by a stray bullet. The girl whose vendetta brought all this destruction now caught in the crossfire of her own making. And then there is Liam, the man who gave everything to stop Luna, pinned by a bullet to the chest, the life slowly draining from his body even as his heart refuses to quit. Grace and Bridget exchange swift glances, their unspoken communication honed by years of operating room crises. They ask, "Can you find the lodged bullet? Is there a path to safety left unblocked?" But beneath the technical jargon lingers the deeper question. Can they save a man whose life was claimed by love and sacrifice? The doors slide shut, isolating the team from the world outside, and the audience is left in a vacuum of tension, ears attuned to every beep, every whispered command, every drop of blood that falls in that sacred, sterile theater. The previews for Wednesday's episode suggest that viewers will hear the crackle of X-ray machines, feel the pulse of defibrillators, and sense the mounting panic as one patient after another bleeds time away. Grace seems desperate, urging her team to push faster, to slash through complication after complication, to summon every ounce of skill honed in her storied career. And Bridget, torn between clinical detachment and the tremor in her own hands, must decide which wounds to address first, knowing that every second adds inches to the journey from life to death. Lee coaches the nurses, patches the gaping artery here, clamps the severed vessel there, and all the while prays that their combined brilliance will outmatch the odds. Out in the waiting area, Hope paces, Carter sits in silent vigil, and Beth, clutching her favorite teddy bear, presses her tiny palm to the glass of the recovery room, willing her daddy to come back. The audience is even left to wonder whether Liam's fall after being shot in the chest was truly an act of love or something darker. Could Luna's bullet have triggered an undiagnosed condition? Some fans speculate that Grace's insistence on a particular test hints at a brain tumor lying in wait, an ex machina that could explain Luna's obsession turned violent. Is Liam really shot through and through, or is that just the prologue to an even more devastating diagnosis? Soap forums light up with theories: brain lesion, dark memory block, coma with a twist. So many possibilities to hold on to while the hospital staff fights for life on screen. Then there is the ripple effect of these choices. Steffi Forrester Finnegan, cut off from the drama, must break the news to Finn, who has already been reeling from the revelation of Luna's plan and Sheila's betrayal. Finn's heartbreak will be twofold. The woman he loves lying unconscious after a head trauma he barely understands, and the shocking realization that his mother-in-law, Sheila, shot Luna in a misguided bid to protect her daughter. Can that single act of violence become the bridge to forgiveness between Steffi and Sheila? The prospect seems both tantalizing and absurd. How do you reconcile with the person who nearly committed murder for your sake? Yet in the world of the bold and the beautiful, love is elastic. Guilt can be washed away in tears, and family bonds can snap back even harder than before. If Sheila's act buys her a sliver of redemption, will Steffi seize it or recoil in horror? Finn will stand between them, torn between loyalty to his wife and compassion for his mother. His heart, already a prize in this tangled love triangle, will fracture further as he watches the very people he cherishes become both victims and aggressors in a saga that escalates with every heartbeat. Through all this, the question resounds, will Liam survive? Will his story end in a funeral shot or in a triumphant return to consciousness, drawing him back to Hope's arms just as Carter prepares to step into the breach? If Liam awakens, will he be the same man who once loved Luna, who once played the hero in his own story? Or will the loss of blood and perhaps the shadow of a brain injury leave him changed, vulnerable, and in need of healing that only his wife can provide? Hope, in that moment, will face the ultimate test of her own resilience. Does she embrace the miracle of Liam's return, Or does she carry the scars of his brush with death forever in her soul? Carter, too, will be tested. Does he remain the steadfast friend and protector, or does he allow his vow to Hope and Beth to blossom into something more, something that could drive an irreparable wedge between her and the Spencer legacy? Fans tuning in on Wednesday will witness not just a medical emergency, but the crucible of character. The fear that grips Hope's heart, the promise Carter makes as a bulwark against despair, the surgical ballet orchestrated by Grace, Bridget, and Lee, and the emotional landmines left in Sheila's wake. They will see relationships stretched to breaking, loyalties tested, and perhaps the first glimmer of forgiveness shining through the wreckage. This will not be a half hour of tidy resolutions. It will be a brutal, unflinching look at how love and violence collide, how sacrifice can both destroy and redeem, and how, in the end, the strongest ties are those forged in the fires of crisis. So clear your schedule, dim the lights, and steel your nerves. July 9th will be a landmark episode that redefines what it means to fight for the people you love, to make promises in the face of loss, and to stand in the wreckage of your own life and declare, "I will not be broken."